Okay, now, this is not going to happen right now, but it's coming in class later today, and could probably not be more important. During a test, I do not help you with your calculator. That's part of like what you're supposed to learn in the course. Some people have come by the Math Center because they realize they can type it in Desmos, which you won't have access to during the test, and so they want to know where things are on their calculator, and we will go over calculator skills later today. So try to listen to me instead of just ignore what's up there for right now, okay? So today, hopefully you have your calculator with you, and we can slowly go through how to push absolute value, square root, and things like that, because some of you probably did your homework on Desmos, okay? Stay right with me, and I'll help things clear up for you. A couple of you could testify to the fact that it also maybe helps to sit down with me one-on-one. Many students leave their chargeable calculators charging in the Math Center periodically. You're welcome to join that crowd over by the Bloombergs. There's a couple of cords you can just plug into, okay? I would say don't unplug someone else's without asking us. And sometimes I've seen one that's been there for a couple of days and it's fine and we can take that charger. But it could be one sitting there charging and they need it for their physics test in 30 minutes, and we don't want to mess that up. So charge at home. If you run out of batteries during the test, it's just a learning experience for you, and I'm sorry. You really want to be able to see these graphs, and it's time that we learn some calculator skills. Look at it this way. If you could do all that you do on your cell phones and social media, this is far below that, okay? So don't be intimidated if you're holding your calculator in your hand and you're looking at me like many Class 9 students in the past are kind of scared of it, and how can I learn it? I want to go, are you kidding me? In this day and age, of course, people learn how to do them before they ever held a cell phone in their hand, but you'll be fine, okay? So just listen up, and I'll guide you through that. If you need more help, it's on you to see me, okay? First thing we're going to do, though, is go ahead and do that pairs quiz in just a minute. Let me show you what you'll be doing with your partner, okay? How the pairs quiz will work, I've already built it into my syllabus. In case you don't make 100 on it today, then you have the right to retake it on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. You can just come by when you're ready and say, okay, I want to take the Analyze the Graph quiz on your own maybe, okay? Know yourself, and that I don't do a lot of pairs things in here that really count for a grade, because I know sometimes one person starts kind of carrying the group if we do 2 or 3. And if you were really honest with yourself, and I don't even know who that might be on this topic, but if I was paired up with Eliza, and I realized Eliza was answering like 90% of the questions, and thank goodness we got 100 on our quiz, I better do something about it before the test on Monday, right? Okay? So be honest enough to try to help your partner as much as you can. I want you to learn from each other instead of just from me all the time. But be honest with yourself and just come by and go, I know you gave me 100 on the quiz, but will you sit with me and take it? You know, so you and I can take it together and talk about what happens. Topics that'll be on the test, you don't have to write this down. I will list it for you. On Thursday, you'll see it on assignments before Monday, or later in the class today if you want me to really write a list down. But it's what we're about to do now with all this Analyze the Graph, max and min stuff, even, odd, and neither, and evaluating some functions. I think that's all we've done since the last test, but I'll come back to my syllabus and let you know. All right, so this is what you're going to be doing with your partner. Your partner hopes that you are listening, okay? So, and we'll practice this again in our review on Thursday for the test. So let me move. Okay, so I just pulled another graph at the top of the page, okay? What I mean by that is, we'll put it up here. You had a certain graph for homework the other night, and then you had all of these questions. Do you see that I can help you learn more by just changing out the graph and asking the same questions, changing out the graph and asking the same questions? All right, so here we go. We've done a lot of good practice on this. When you're practicing, you don't have to do this viewing rectangle. I won't be asking you that. But it is good to think about, we'll talk a little bit today on how to change the window on your calculator. Some of you didn't even know these words are anywhere on your calculator. But suppose that I want to see up to like 100 and my calculator's only going up to 10, you have to know how to change the window that you're looking out of. In other words, the window you're looking at on your calculator. Just like you do on Instagram. When you see a picture and you want to look at it better, you can now, remember a couple of years ago you couldn't blow those up. Do y'all remember that on Instagram?
Yeah.
Where you could touch it, but you couldn't like look closer, but they've changed that now. But you know, so you might want to change what you're looking at over in the corner, or you know, is she wearing the bracelet I gave her for Christmas, or did she throw it away? You know, things like that. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to kind of move this down to where we can look at it over here. Whoa, whoa, how? Okay, let me try to format that and go in front. Let's see. Oh, I think I could do it here. Thanks. Great, thank you.
Mrs. Eric,
Uh-huh.
can we fix the lights? Because I can't really see.
Yeah.
So somebody do that. But just don't make it too dark because that also gets challenging for other people. So we should do the best we can.
I'm good.
This is good for now, I think. Thank you. All right, so we're looking at this picture, and we're just going to answer these questions together. You don't have to write anything down. I think it might be confusing if you tried to write all this down right now. You have a sheet like this with a different graph with lots of questions that you had for homework, and we'll just keep doing more of these. You and your friend will get something that looks like this in your peers quiz in a little while, okay? So let's see if we can answer these questions. It'll be something like this on the test also. All right, raise your hand if you feel like you can name the x-intercepts. One you will have to estimate. Bailey?
0.
Okay. And? X-intercept?
2.8.
Yeah. So something around 2.8. You can just list the x's, or it's very common for x-intercepts to do this. Bailey's got 0, 0, and like 2.80. Now, of course, on the test, if I do something like this to you where you have to estimate, and if Jillian says 2.85 and Bailey says 2.8, I'm fine with that, okay? As long as you're not at 2.1, then I know you don't know what you're doing. Question already?
Well, you always have to write the full one, right?
No, you could do either one. I just said you could write x equals or the point. But Yana, good question. I think the point is a little bit preferable right now. So y-intercept. Anybody know where it intercepts the y-axis? All right, Daniela?
I think it's only at 0.
Yeah, so let's say the whole thing, like Yana was asking, 0, 0. You know, if the graph had gone like this, then Daniela would have said 0, 12. Okay? So does everybody understand that? Okay. Is this a function? Raise your hand if you think you know the answer to that. Is this a function? Margot? Yes, it is a function. All right, so domain. Raise your hand if you've got domain. Besides Margot knows everything. Okay, that's awesome. So you want to be her partner. Somebody new? Ella, domain? You have to estimate.
Negative 2.5 to 3.
3. All right, so, and I think Gabby and maybe some others, you like to do it like negative 2.5 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 3. You can, but most of y'all use an interval notation. So Ella's looking at this. Good job, Ella. And it picks up, she estimates at negative 2.5 included, right, because of the closed circle. And on the domain, it continues to 3, and then it has that little dot right there, so it stops somewhere close to 3. Ella?
You've answered this like 50 times.
Okay.
It's okay if you do interval notation, right?
Yeah, this is interval notation right
I mean,
here.
I'm sorry, the like greater than or.
Yes, just make sure with domain you're using x, and with range you're using y. Because then I'd have to count off if you call them both x, okay? And then if it's included, you'd have to do less than or equal to, less than or equal to, okay? And you can practice that on some Delta Math I open up. You know, it allows you to do either one. So practice the one that you want. Every now and then they'll be prepared. On the last test I said, answer this in interval notation, and then I would count off if you didn't do it in the notation I asked. Daniela?
If there were to be an arrow, it would be negative 2.5. Oh no.
Yeah, let's look at that. Okay, if there was an arrow here,
Yeah.
then it would be negative 2.5 to infinity.
Okay.
Okay? It would just keep on going in all those directions. It kind of looks weird that it's going down, but it's going out and down. Okay? If it had this arrow, it would be all real numbers or negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay, so great questions before it really counts for anything. Okay, now let's do range. All right, so anybody want to give range? Maria?
It's like 8.5 something, and then it goes up to 16.
Okay, this will happen, I think, on the quiz I'm giving you. Be really careful that you look at what I'm counting by. I'm counting by fours. So this is probably about 6 right here. Do y'all see what I mean? Not 5 or 4.5. So since I'm counting by fours, so Maria, this is probably more between negative 8 and negative 10. It might be, negative 8 and negative 12. Do you see that's probably closer to negative 10? So you and your partner really watch what I'm counting by. Are y'all okay with that?
Yeah.
So Maria will go negative 10 to, I think you said 16. Okay? So range is negative 10 to 16. All right, now let's go back to what Daniela asked. What if there were arrows on these? Then my domain would be negative infinity, but it still wouldn't go to positive infinity. Do y'all see what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay? It would go from negative infinity to 16. And then if you're using the other notation, make sure you practice it. Anyway. All right, where does f of x equal 0? Look at where the number is, not f of 0, but where does f of x equal 0? And when I start to ask you that, girls, if I say, where does f of x equal 14? It'd be good just to look at something like that. Do y'all see all the times it equals 14 throughout here, like here, here, and then you could name the times it equaled 14. This one says, where does f of x equal 0? We've really already named those by chance, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right, list the what values? X values, because I already know y. Okay, so when I say when does f of x equal 0, I'm only looking for the x's. Would y'all say 0 and 2.8?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is 0 and 2.8. All right, so our exercise the other day, here's some water. Okay. So when is the graph less than 0? When is the graph underwater? Okay. So tell me when the graph goes underwater. Now. So from 2.8 to, this one stopped, I'm sorry. It didn't have an arrow on it. So from 2.8 to 3. It's like a teeny tiny time that it was underwater. Okay. So from 2.8 open to 3. I can include the 3. The 3 is definitely underwater. Is the 2.8 underwater?
Yes.
It's right on the surface, isn't it? I don't know if it's in the water. Or do you see it's at 0? Do you see what I mean, Daniela?
Would you count that?
No, I would not include this dot right here because right now it is not underwater until it goes down here. Okay? A lot of partial credit on that kind of thing, though. I'm mostly looking for the interval.
But you included 2.8, and that's why I said no.
Oh, that's an open. I just didn't draw very well. This is open, and this is closed. This 2.8 is not less than 0. At 2.8, what would you say is happening at 2.8, Daniela?
It's going underwater.
No, 2.8, anybody? At 2.8, Yana?
I think it's like surface level, so.
So it equals what?
0.
0. So it's not less than 0 yet, is it?
Yeah.
If I say, give me a number less than 0, under 0, you couldn't say 0. You'd say negative point something. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, Rebecca?
But also, I remember for the keeping them, the parentheses and the brackets, you said that you can do either.
On increasing, decreasing. Okay. Okay, so now look at the next question. When is it greater than or equal to 0? That means it's what? Above the water or below the water? Greater than or equal to above. All right, so I lost part of my line here. So as I'm moving across, what I'm at first? Am I above the water or below the water? Until I get to what? 2.8. All All right, I have to be really careful right here. Is that above or below? Danielle and I were just talking about that. It's on the surface. Why can I include that right now, though? Because it says greater than or equal to. Good, Sarah. All right, so all during this time, I haven't gone under the water yet. And so I would say and it didn't have arrows on it. Let me go back to the original. Okay. So I would say from here, negative 2.5, and I stay above the water all the way until I get to right here, which is we thought about 2.8. I'm including those because I've also got the points where it's equal 0. Which is kind of tricky. I understand that. You can get some partial credit. I'm not just going to count the whole thing off for your bracket or parentheses. All right. And notice here, Ella, it says use interval notation. So I didn't give you a choice there. Interval notation is what we're doing. Ella?
So if it's like, if it goes down and comes back up, would you put like a U between?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like it could happen in two places. You could have something like this, where what Ella's referring to is you could have something like this. So it'd be underwater during this time, and then again less than 0 during that time. You don't really have to use the U for me, but you do for Delta Math. For me, I'm happy if you go -3 to negative whatever, and then -1-ish to, like, you can just list them both. But technically, they should have that little U in between. Everybody pay attention, your partner's going to be really upset. All right, find f of 2. What I would suggest when I give you the y and want the x, that you actually take your pencil and go, and draw a straighter line than I just did. Okay. When does f of x equal 2? Let's see. I want to know when I'm going to ever hit 2. And I think about right here. So it looks like that it happens when x is about -1/2 and +1/2 and maybe 2.7. Do y'all see what I mean? Okay, f of x equals, what is f of, I did that wrong and y'all let me mess that up.
No, because I thought it was the top.
Yeah, that is wrong. Sorry. It didn't say f of x equal 2. It says f of 2.
Yeah.
Okay? So what do you do if I say f of 2?
X goes to, you go all the way up.
So the answer would just be 16. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. F of -5
I thought that's what you're supposed to say.
does not exist. There is no f of -5.
Yeah.
But it'd be back here and I don't have anything back there. That's okay. You could say undefined or does not exist.
Could you say no solution?
You could say no solution.
Do you feel like anything with nothing, no answer? Doesn't really matter.
No.
As long as you say like no.
As long as you get the point across to me for now, there's like things we need to say in the future in mathematics, but just let me know it's not there, okay? Hey girls, that's real important. Like, I've seen somebody do something, a speaker that came to my classes one time that did some analysis for a company that was hoping in like 3 years to make $100,000, and they crunched the numbers and gave them some graphs, and it didn't look like it was ever going to hit that. Do y'all see what I mean? Like, it doesn't look like your graph's ever going to go there, so maybe you need another business plan. How many times does the line y equal 2 intersect the graph? So that's when I would do this. Y equals 2, and so it's a pretty easy answer. Here at first, how many? Do y'all see it intersects y equals 2 3 times? There's 3 points where that happens, so you just say 3. 3 times. All right, now let's go to the other questions, and you'll be doing this with a friend in just a minute. Okay. Where does f of x equal 4? And so if I take this line, I want to know every x value, every x where my y answer is 4. And do you see this is a really good way to tell? Okay. Are y'all okay with that? All right, so f of x equals 4. It looks like about negative 0.6 or 0.7. It looks like over here about 0.6 or 0.7. And it looks like right here about 2.7. Just estimating if it doesn't land right there. Where does f of x equal -5? Let's go on down. Where does f of x equal -5? Do y'all think it'd be about right there? So it looks like it happens at about 3 maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Are y'all okay with that? Yeah. All right. Now, this is a little bit new. I've got to find f of -1 and subtract f of 2, but I think it's really easy. We'll find out. Can anybody tell me f of -1? What would I do to find f of -1? All right, so Victoire would go to -1, and it looks like it equals about 8. Okay? And then you say minus f of 2, which is 16, and so I get -8 for my answer.
Yep.
All right? 3 times f of 1, so I'm going to say 3 times. Now I'm going to find f of 1 that looks like it's about probably 7. Because it's between 4 and 8, but it's really close to 8. So, Ella, I'd say 7. So I get 21. All right. This is an interesting question. My calculus students even had questions about this earlier when they were doing maximum. Absolute maximum value. I want to know the highest that it reaches. Value means y. Absolute maximum. 16. Now, it happens in 2 places, doesn't it? Okay. Now, in big events, a lot of times people don't tie, but there's times I have had a club and people have run for president, and every time I count the ballots, they tie. And finally, I just decide to have co-presidents because I just can't break the tie no matter what happens. Do y'all see what I mean? Yeah. So it's okay. It can happen over and over again. That's the highest point. All right. Absolute minimum value. That was a little bit tricky. -10 right here. All right, now the relatives, or sometimes local, are all the hills and valleys. Relative maximum value. Daniela?
I think 16.
16. Of course, if you're relatively higher than everybody you're around, you run a chance of being the best ever. Okay, I bet that Tom Brady was like a fantastic quarterback in high school and college. And now he's in the NFL. He's, a lot of times people say he's one of the best ever. There's probably exceptions to that rule. Didn't even run in high school. And I didn't even know that I had that ability. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't compare myself because I'm not that great. But Inez McMahon, you may have her as a coach at some point, and some of you already have. She was a world-class runner. She ran for Adidas. But she didn't run in high school. She didn't find out until later in life that she was really, really fast. And so some of those people that thought they were the relative max were surpassed by somebody that wasn't even doing it at the time. Y'all know Dominguez Rivera, her mother found out like in her 40s that she was insanely fast. And she travels the world doing marathons. She was elected like runner of the year for New York Roadrunners a couple of years ago. The female. That was a long story, one of my stupid stories. Okay, so let's continue on. Relative minimum. Sarah? 0. All right, and so you can just say the y. Value just means you got to give me the y. All right, now tell me where the graph is increasing. So tell me. All right, so from -2.5 to, and it's real important that you tell me when it's happening. When I say where or when is it increasing, you're still going across. You tell me when it happens. My graph is increasing from -2.5 to 2. And Rebecca, we'll just use parentheses. Okay. Thank you. -2.5 to -2. And then does it ever increase again?
Yes.
0 to 2. Okay. All right, and then, bless you, where is it decreasing? Tell me where it's decreasing. 2 to 0. Okay. Thank you. I'm really having trouble with that negative. -2 to 0. And does it decrease again? 2 to 3. Okay, and I'm going to teach you one-to-one function today because it gives you an easy thing to get right on the test. This one is not one-to-one. A one-to-one function is important for reasons you don't know yet and really won't know for a long time, but it's a time that I teach you this. A function, the x's never repeat. Like our class functions great in that I only have one Ella, I have one Jillian, I have one Margot. It's easy to call you by name, one Susan, one Sarah, one Claire. It's not confusing, okay? Have you ever met another Victoire?
No.
Probably the reason I'm married to my husband today is his name is not Victoire.
I'm gonna be like, huh?
His name is weird. It's Jed, and my brother's name is Jed. So I grew up having that's my brother's name, which is kind of a strange name, and everybody calls him Jeff, Jeb,
Can I be
you
your
know.
husband so I can say that I
Like Jeb Bush?
But I mean, when I met him,
Jeb.
we started talking about, he's like, hey, I'm Jed Lazari, and I'm like, J-E-D? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, my brother's name's Jed. And he goes, no, it's not. I've never met another Jed. But now they're good friends. So, I'll be, well,
Jed,
thank
please
goodness.
be your husband.
But my
I
point,
need to meet a Jed.
I really do need to be.
I know Jed.
you will. He's around. People know.
Really? Around.
Which Jed?
Well, not today. He's at work. But, I mean, he chaperones dances sometimes. And
Okay,
he
great.
comes to games. And,
Tell me when he does, because I need to meet a Jed.
oh, you need to meet a Jed? I'll bring them both by sometime.
Yeah.
Okay. Or I'll have a picture of my brother and my husband. My point is, it's such a weird name that it brings a conversation. So, Margot, if you meet a Margot, you probably then start talking about how do you spell your name? Is it the same as mine, like M-A-R-G-O, or yours has A-U-X? All right, I think Yana has a math question.
Well,
Alright.
so this is just about the relative minimum. So,
Uh-huh.
so wouldn't it be both 0 and -10?
No, a relative means who you're eating Thanksgiving dinner with. It's who you're around.
So it's
Relative, this
What is? Yeah, I don't understand relative.
relative listen, I'm telling you, thank you. Relative minimum and maximum only come from hills and valleys.
Okay. So
Okay.
it can't be me.
That's not the endpoint.
absolutes.
They could be the absolutes. These were relative maximums that Daniela pointed out for us, but they also happen to be the absolute highest also.
Oh, it's just the endpoints that we got.
Relative means within the graph. Absolute means everything in the whole world. Relative means all the hills and valleys that you encounter. Relative or local. It's real easy, so I don't feel like I'm like getting it to you. So let me say it again.
So not the two endpoints of the graph is what I was saying.
I don't really know. Those would not count for relatives. Okay, girls, what I was about to show you something really easy, a one-to-one function. And then I got off on Jed and Victoire and Margot. Okay, so anyway, what I was starting to say is the class is really easy because there's only one of this and one of that and one of this, so it's easy to go, to call on somebody. However, in my calculus class, there's two Sophias. And so it doesn't function very well because I have to then find a workaround. I have to say their whole name or a nickname or something, okay? So anyway, if I run this across, what that tells you is it's hitting only every first name one time, okay? Like nobody repeats. As opposed to if it looked like this, y'all see that this would flag for me that there's two of the people that have the same first name?
Yes.
Okay. A one-to-one function means they also can't have any y's that repeat. So then I also run a horizontal line test on it. Because then later in life it could be very confusing if you have the same last name. Does anybody know they have the same last name as Hamilton? Probably. There's probably some other Hamiltons. And
I've never met
There
okay.
used to be a
I
Alexis
have Brendan
Holder
Hamilton.
Okay.
at the school. Everyone
I
thought she
remember
was my
that.
sister.
Okay. So hang on. I know Alexis. Girls, put your hands down. Thank you for playing, but I need to move on. Hang on just a minute, Danielle. I'm not taking comments or questions. I want y'all to listen. Okay? In fact, I'll use Gabby's example and I'll use Daniela, okay? In Gabby's example, I taught Alexis Holder and now I teach Gabby Holder, okay? So if one day they are both engineers in a firm in New York and that somebody calls and said, can I speak to Miss Holder? that's going to be a little bit confusing. They're going to go, well, do you want Gabby Holder or do you want Alexis Holder? Okay? So if all of the GAD girls grew up and all lived in the same apartment, and somebody calls and says, could I speak to Miss Gad, that's going to be real confusing. All right? So right now it's Daniela and Chloe, and I've forgotten all the other names, but it's not confusing. Okay? But if I all of a sudden need to call them by their last name, like in a sporting event, some of you go by your last names, and it can be kind of confusing. So I'm going to test and see if any last names repeat. This is so easy, I hate not to put it on the test on Monday. All right, so I'm checking to see if any last names repeat with a heart. This is checking the last names. For some reason, I can't get a hold of that, so I'll draw me another one. All right, so here I go. I'm checking to see if any last names repeat. What happens right there? Do you see they start repeating? All right, so that one is not one-to-one. All right, if I have this, let's do a green vertical line test on it. Is it a function?
Yes.
Okay. And now we'll do a purple horizontal line test. It's a function. Is it one-to-one? Yes.
So
Okay.
if it passes the vertical line test, it's automatically a
Oh.
one-to-one function.
No. If it passes the vertical line test, all you know is it's a function. Everybody has a different first name.
But isn't it if it's a function, it's gonna be if it passes like if it's a function, it's automatically gonna be a one-to-one function. It's not gonna repeat.
This is a one-to-one. This is functions. Whoa, that's so weird.
It's spiky.
Okay. Girls, we need to move on, so I need y'all to be really quiet and listen to me, okay? Okay? So, those are the GADs I've taught, okay? So if I ask another teacher, like, have you ever taught, that's a bad example. So suppose that they're in my class and it functions really well. Every now and then I have siblings in a class together. That didn't happen, but let's pretend that Daniela and Chloe are in the room together, okay? And so if I say Daniela or I say Chloe, they know which one I'm talking about, okay? So it's a function. It passes this first test. Your names are different. It's very easy, okay? But if they send somebody up and need, Miss Gad's here to get her daughter, then all of a sudden it's confusing. Because I don't know which one to send. And then I got to talk about it, okay? As opposed to if I had this, is that how you spell it, Claire? How you spell your last name?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, does it function? Can I go, Daniela, turn on the lights. Claire, go get me some water. Y'all don't have to do either one of those. But y'all see what I mean? They're not, they know exactly. But then somebody could come up and say, Miss Gad is here to get her daughter. Do you see it's not only a function, it's a one-to-one function. Everybody has a different first name. And if it's one-to-one, everybody has a different last name. Like, it'll never be confusing. Okay? So this is a function, but it's not one-to-one. It's going to be confusing if I say what's f of 3. Sorry, that's not confusing. It's confusing if I say f of x equals 3. Now all of a sudden you got more than one answer. Hey girls, don't make this hard. Let's do another one. And let's stop with the questions about it and just listen. Don't think about your question. Just listen, okay? The only reason I'm doing this, it gives you sure points on the test to add to the other points that you're getting. And we need to learn it in Algebra 2. Is this a function?
Yes.
Yes. It passes the first test. It's a function. Is it one-to-one?
No.
No. Okay. Let's look at this one. Oh, no, there's lots. So I should think of another one.
Sorry.
This is something called the square root function. You've seen me draw some of these before, okay? Is this a function?
Yes.
Yes. Is it 1-to-1?
Yes.
Yes.
It's the X and Y.
It's just a graph.
Do y'all see what I mean? Okay, super easy. All right, now I'm going to pair you up. I'm going to let the calculator, the computer pair you up. So I think that's where you name babies. I don't know if we want that one.
You don't want to generate a name.
I don't want to generate a name. You're right.
Picker. There you go.
Pickard. I don't want that either. What do I use these patterns?
And then use like a 12-sided die.
Okay, we'll do this. Because I want it to be that you're not just doing it with who you're sitting next to. I wanted to mix it up a little. Raise your hand if your birthday is in November. Raise your hand if your birthday is in December. February. March. Okay, Rebecca and Evelyn, if y'all will get together. Evelyn, why don't you come over here and we'll displace Julian for a minute so she knows where she's sitting. All right, April. All right, May. All right, so Claire and Bailey are a group. So y'all can just sit where you are, you're fine. June. Okay, so Ella, if you'll come over here, Bayana. July. Okay, so Gabby and Sarah. Gabby,
I'll go next.
okay, so you and Margo? That's okay, because there were 3. Where was I? July? August. Okay, so Eliza and Gabby. I'll put you in a minute. September?
Sorry, where am I going?
Okay, Jillian, go with, when's yours? September what?
28.
Mine is 2!
Really?
Susan?
That's why you guys are like.
Oh, you're August. Okay, so Jillian and Maria and Danielle and Susan. October. Who's left? Raise your hand if you don't have a partner.
Me.
Oh, there's 15 people. Okay. Well, you jump in.
You want to be partners with me?
Susan and Jen, no, I will not be a partner. Thank you for asking. I'm going to put you back here in this room with Susan and Danielle.
Sarah.
No one has to put So,
I'm going to say, hey girls, I'm going to say things you all need to hear. I'm going to say things you all need to hear.
yeah.
I'm going to say things you all need to hear.
Yeah.
Come here.
Thank you. Oh.
We write everyone in the group together.
Well, I'm going to say things you all need to hear.
We write the names of everyone in our group and just ourselves.
Okay, these are the things you all need to hear. Is everyone listening?
Yes.
I hope you make 100 today and don't have to do it over, okay? If on your graph, please put arrows going up like this. So your graph looks sort of like that. Put arrows, it goes off to infinity, okay? That'll help you with domain and range and other things, okay? Each group can ask me 2 questions and that's it. You cannot ask me 3. So choose your questions wisely. You may want to fill out the whole sheet and see if you have a question. All right, should not be talking or working right now, or you'll miss something.
Can we start?
No, you should not be working, you should not be talking, or you'll be sorry. Okay? The rules are Everybody fills out their own sheet, okay, because this will be your own grade. If you want to do one together and put both your names on it, and you want to buy into that, and you just want to put one of the sheets aside, that's okay too. But the problem is, every now and then that I do a pairs quiz, people can't agree on the like minimum, and one person thinks it's this and wants the 100, and the other person doesn't agree. So if you disagree on anything, fill out your own sheet. If you go through it and agree on everything, then put both your names on one sheet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you could give me a Claire and Bailey sheet, all right? Or they could give me individual. Good. Only 2 questions per group.
And then we'll compare them. Okay, well, okay, is the mayor reducing
Yeah.